In this first episode, we're going to teach you the prep for a Mexican fiesta. We cannot have a party without having phenomenal guacamole or the salsa fresca or the pico de gallo. All these things make your tacos and your food just sing. So we're going to teach you from scratch how to make pico de gallo, how to make a beautiful savory guacamole, a little bit of a spicy sour cream to top your dishes with, and then we're also going to teach you how to make a salsa verde. Are you ready? We're going to make pico de gallo from scratch. And pico de gallo means the beak of the rooster. It's a salsa that's fresh and is got a lot of texture and little bits of pieces and a great deal of fresh flavor. It's out of this world and it only takes like minutes to put together. So here we are and we're gonna do it really quick for you. So the first thing that you need to know is the majority of pico de gallo is Roma tomatoes, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna rough chop them using the Vidalia Chop Wizard, because what that will do is that will create uniform pieces. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the size of the pieces for the cut, and I'm creating slices that are about as thick as the pieces are going to be wide. So you're looking at about 1/3 of an inch. And we're really not wasting much of the tomato at all. In fact, if you really wanted to, it's totally okay with coring out just the stem and using the top of it as well. As I've said in other episodes, a lot of your food dollar tends to get wasted in clippings that you could actually make into food items. With Roma tomatoes, that's all of the waste that we have. I'm gonna make one more just for this batch so that it's a smaller batch. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in the largest cut cube, and we're gonna process all of these Roma tomatoes. Now, a good rule for thumb is when you're making salsa, keep in mind that some people are going to use it like it's the greatest thing ever and they're going to burn through it, and some people are only going to use a teaspoon or a little bit more. So what I generally do as a rule of thumb is that I count how many people are planning on coming to the party, and I make about 1.5 ounces of salsa per person. I haven't had a time where I've run out of salsa yet. In this case, we've got about 3 cups of Roma tomatoes. Now, rule of thumb is the next main ingredient is going to be white onion. And what we're gonna do with the white onion is we're also gonna process it through the Vidalia Chop Wizard, but we're gonna cut it on the finer setting because it tends to be stronger in flavor and it tends to overpower if it's in too much of a volume. So we have about 3 cups of Roma tomatoes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use about 3/4 of a cup of white onion. Again, we're going to cut it so it's about the width of the cutters, the blades. And we're just going to process all of the white onion. So we've got about 3/4 of a cup of onion prepped. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it out and we're going to add it to the tomatoes. So basically for every cup of Roma tomatoes, do about 1/4 of a cup of onion. Now, if you like your Pico de Gallo spicy, what I would suggest is take a little bit of jalapeno. You can use fresh if you'd like, or you can use pickled. I tend to be a little bit of a wuss, so I can't stand hot food. I do like a little bit of flavor and a little bit of heat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take 4 individual little rings, and I'm gonna mince them very, very fine. And I am slicing them very, very fine. I mean, probably as fine as I mince an ultra fine garlic. And the reason for it is I want the heat and flavor to disperse evenly throughout the entire dish. Now the next step is we need fresh cilantro. So what I generally do is about half of the volume of onion is what we're gonna use for the fresh cilantro. You're gonna peel off the leaves because you don't need the stems. If you'd like to use the stems, you can, but most of the flavor and the color is concentrated in the leaves. So you're looking at, in this case, it was 3/4 of a cup of onion. So we're looking at about the volume when it's not chopped, about the volume of 3/8 of a cup. We're gonna mince it fine. And you get this beautiful cilantro aroma. I mean, this is the whole reason to have Pico de Gallo. Okay, and then we're gonna add it to the mixture. Now, this is where it gets very, very interesting. You can make it just the way it is if you want it to be light flavored, if you want it to be very, very fresh. If you want the true flavor and you really want a punch from it, what I would suggest is make sure that you add lime juice. And once again, we're pressing the limes to get the juice ready to be extracted. I'm gonna do one more half lime. You know what? We're gonna do the whole lime. Let's not waste. Okay, now all we're gonna do is we're gonna take a little bit of salt and sprinkle it lightly. We've put about, I would say, just over a teaspoon, about maybe a teaspoon and a half of salt. And we're gonna mix. And in this case, your hand is actually the perfect tool for the job. After you've mixed it evenly and all of the cilantro and the onions and the tomatoes are basically coated with the lime juice and the salt, you can taste it to see whether or not you need to add salt. And you can even add the heat to it to add a little bit more jalapeno if you wish. Now we're gonna taste it just to see whether it has enough salt, whether it needs a little bit more lime juice, or whether you think that it needs maybe a little bit more heat. It's perfect. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have fresh Pico de Gallo. So guacamole is a lot of people's absolute favorite, and I think you're gonna be disappointed in me because my guacamole is so incredibly simple. You've taken so much time to take care of the Pico de Gallo that if you did that with every single sauce, you would end up with it taking hours to make these things. So what we're gonna do to make my guacamole, all we do is we cut the avocado in half. We get rid of the seeds. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna empty the guacamole by squeezing the skins into the bowl. Now, if you pick your avocados wisely, they're ripe and they're soft and they're wonderful. And this is a very, very simple procedure. If your avocados are not ripe and these are not ready to go, this is not a good way to make your guacamole. But luckily, with the pattern being what it is, these avocados are perfectly ripe and ready to go. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna mash the avocado. I like it to have a little bit of texture. If you don't, you can have it blended if you wish, and that will make it very, very smooth and creamy. But I like to know what I'm eating, and I like it when avocado has a little bit of texture. So once it's about half mixed, now all I do is I add 2 scoops of the Pico de Gallo. Now you don't have to do that. Avocado guacamole can be made without adding anything into it. You can literally do it with just the mashed avocado. But if you want a guacamole Mexican style, the bit of Pico de Gallo that's added adds a wonderful texture and depth to the flavor, and I'm gonna tell you, there's not a better way to make guacamole. And there you have it, our fresh guacamole. The next thing we're gonna make is a homemade spicy cream sauce. It's really just sour cream that's been kicked up a notch. I can't handle heat, but I do like the flavor. So what I did at work is I took some sour cream, and into it, I added some liquid pain, some sriracha. In this case, I used about 24 ounces of sour cream, and I'm using about 3 tablespoons of sriracha. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon, and I'm gonna put a little bit of smoked paprika. In this case, about, I would say, a half a teaspoon. And all we're gonna do is blend that together. And once it's evenly blended, it's done. And you have a spicy cream sauce. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of create a little bit of a treat. If you've been to a San Diego taco shop, you usually find phenomenal spicy carrots. What they do is they usually boil them in brine and then soak them in jalapeno juice to give it just a wonderful heat and also flavor. If you're at home and you want to cheat, what you do is you just take a carrot, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna slice them relatively thin, because we're not gonna boil them. We don't have the time, and we don't have the inclination to do all that extra work. So I'm looking at about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And then once you do that, all you really need to do is take jalapeno juice from the jalapenos, put it into a bag with maybe 1 or 2 of the jalapenos, and we're gonna put these in, and we're gonna slow marinate them in the refrigerator. And after approximately an hour or 2, they should be good enough to serve. If you want, you can have them marinate overnight. But what I would do is pull out all of the air from the package and then make sure that the carrots are completely coated with the juice. And when you're ready to serve, you'll have your own version of spicy carrots. So sometimes when you're preparing a party, you have to weigh your options and you have to weigh how much money, time, and energy you have, and then whether or not you can actually do the things that you said you were gonna do. And it's perfectly acceptable to call in backup when you need it. Convenience costs, but when I was at La Tiendita's shop this morning picking up all the supplies, it's on Claremont Mesa Boulevard at, I think, Claremont Drive, or 1 street off. They have everything. And I knew that I don't know how to make a good salsa roja yet. So what I did was I cheated and I bought a pint of their salsa roja. So here's how we're gonna make the salsa roja. Are you ready? Open container that you paid $3.65 for. Pour into the container that you're going to serve, and then put it in front of your guests. Can it get any easier than that? The truth is that the smell and the flavor of this salsa roja is so amazing. There's smokiness, there's richness. You can tell that the vegetables were fire roasted before they were used. I can't do this on Fresh Food Therapy without a lot of practice, but I promise you, I'll try to up my game for the next episode. The next dish that we're gonna make, the next salsa, is a salsa verde, which is salsa that is made with tomatillo, garlic, cilantro, onion, and a little bit of lime juice, a little bit of sugar, and a little bit of jalapeno. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these and we're gonna peel them, take off the shell. These are the tomatillo. And the shells actually look like a leaf shield. The tomatillos on the inside should be blemish-free, should be basically ripe, but not oddly shaped. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put them under the broiler and get a nice little char on them. And at the exact same time, we're going to put in some garlic to roast. And we're just gonna put it under the broiler about 4 inches, and then we're gonna roast it just until it's lightly charred, lightly browned on the outside. So it was under the broiler for about 3.5 minutes, and now we're just gonna turn it and see that the other side is doing very, very well as well. I'm gonna give it 1 more minute, and then we should be ready to roll. The tomatillos and the garlic has been roasted and it's ready to go. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start prepping it right away. Now, the only thing about this next step is it does require a little bit of pulverization. So what we're gonna do is we're going to take some white onion. I'm gonna say about 1/5 of an onion, and we're gonna mince it really, really fine. Now, if you have a food processor at home, this would be an incredible dish to use the food processor for. Or if you have a really professional blender or juicer, this is the way to go. I don't have those. I am my food processor. So it's gonna take me a few minutes to prep all of this very, very fine, but it truly is a labor of love. Once you have it processed very, very fine, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add it to the bowl. And we're going to start processing the cilantro. Much in the same way, we're gonna mince this very, very fine. A little bit of the stems isn't a problem with this one, but you are gonna need a significant amount, about twice the volume of the onion, because it will actually mince down to very, very fine pieces. Once we have it trimmed, we're gonna begin to mince it very, very fine as well. The cilantro is what gives a lot of the green color to the dish, and also a great deal of flavor. We don't want to skimp on it. Now we're just going to add the cilantro to the bowl. And we're almost ready to go into the final steps of this wonderful salsa. So once you have that, we're gonna add just a little bit of garlic powder, just a light sprinkle, about a half a teaspoon. We're gonna add about a tablespoon, actually, you know what? About a teaspoon and a half of sugar. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna balance out a little bit of the acidity and a little bit of the bitterness of the dish. And then we're gonna add fresh lime juice. And we're gonna need about 2 juicy limes. So if one of these is a little dry, don't be afraid to grab another one, but you are gonna need about, I would say about a 1/4 to a 1/3 of a cup of lime juice. Okay, now that we have this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the roasted tomatillos. And we're gonna take the garlic cloves and we're gonna mince them. Now, roasted garlic has a smoky, kind of earthy flavor to it, which is different from raw garlic. You can actually take roasted garlic and spread it onto bread and have one of the most amazingly sultry culinary experiences. But in the case of making this salsa, the roasted garlic creates a new dimension of flavor and richness. Now this is where it would be really handy to have a food processor, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna mash it together the best we can with the tools that we have on hand. So I'm gonna take my handy dandy mixer, and I'm gonna be very careful because otherwise the seeds and everything else will fly everywhere. So just press very carefully until all the juice is released. It will take a little bit of time to get this blended together, but when you do, you will have a salsa that you made by hand that will literally blow any jarred salsa verde out of the water. So after a few minutes of blending, you have a beautiful salsa verde ready to serve to your guests. This is it. This is the end of the salsa episode, and we have made for your pleasure fresh Pico de Gallo, fresh salsa verde, a spicy cream sauce. We cheated and bought the Salsa Roja. We made some fresh guacamole. We made our own spicy carrots, and we are ready to go with a bowl of chips. We look forward to seeing you for part 2, where we do the setup. Oh. Got a live one here.